Thank you very much, Rupert, and thank you all for coming here today. I am delighted to welcome you to this building, which, as all of you know, was formerly Conservative Central Office. It was from the windows of this very building that Margaret Thatcher and Norman Tebbit acknowledged the adulation of the cheering crowds in 3 successive general elections back in the glory days of the Conservative Party. And it is a tragedy, an ironic tragedy, to think that this building, which has so much Conservative history in it, should now be the headquarters of the occupying power in our country. I should, of course, say thank you to, although they're not here, to Lord Lawson and John Redwood, both of whom have provided some words of wisdom for the cover of the book. Lord Lawson was kind enough to say it was well-informed and merciless, which I thought was quite a nice line. John Redwood said Roger Helmer revels in controversy. Well, I'm sure there's nobody here who will for a moment agree with that. But I found myself thinking today, or earlier this week, what is the opposite of scepticism? It's one of those words that doesn't seem to have a convenient opposite. Perhaps gullibility, although that seems unkind. Perhaps true believer status, and we get plenty of true believers in Brussels. I think the nearest I can find to an opposite of scepticism is consensus. And certainly in Brussels you will find consensus. And most of the people in Brussels agree that whatever the problem, the solution is more Europe. Europe is in trouble, we need more Europe. The euro is crashing, we need more Europe. We need more centralisation, we need more bureaucracy. That will be the solution. That is the consensus in Brussels. Strangely enough, when I talk to London taxi drivers or chat to folk in the pub, I don't find many people in the UK who accept that particular consensus. But bear in mind, most of the people who take this view in Brussels are on the payroll. They have a towering contempt for the ordinary voter. You can see that in their response to referenda. Again and again and again, they simply dismiss the response to a referendum, occasionally wringing their hands and saying, perhaps we haven't explained it quite well enough. Now, I spent most of the last 12 years explaining Europe to people, and my experience is the more I explain it, the angrier they get. The other issue of consensus, of course, which has engaged me for the last 4 or 5 years or so, is the whole question of climate change. We are told that the IPCC represents a consensus of scientific opinion on climate change. The whole IPCC process is, of course, controlled by a relatively small, about 2.5 dozen, and incestuous group of scientists, some of whom you will find at the University of East Anglia Climate Research Unit. They publish each other's papers, they review each other's papers, they try very hard to intimidate authors of learned journals to prevent dissenting views from being published, and so on. And they control, of course, the content of the IPCC reports. But of course, the climate change debate is not merely about science, it's also doing huge political and economic damage. I was delighted over the weekend, as recently as that, to see Charles Moore's piece in the Telegraph, Lord Lawson's piece in the Mail, editorials in both papers, Lord Turnbull, very senior former civil servant, writing an excellent report condemning climate hysteria. And of course the CBI at last has acquired some backbone and has told the government that if it goes on like this, industries will simply not invest in Britain, they will go elsewhere. And this is, of course, the classic lose-lose situation. Britain loses the production, the jobs and the investment, but actually the industrial processes go to countries outside the UK, outside the EU, mostly with lower environmental standards. And therefore you probably get more emissions, more pollution, and a worse outcome for the environment at the same time as you are actually damaging the British economy. And as I say, I think in the concluding words of my book, I was born a free man, well actually a baby, but you know what I mean. I was born a free man in a free country, and all I ask is to be a free man in a free country again. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Roger. I think Roger will take questions if there are any. Otherwise, I will just remind everyone that the copies of the book Sceptic at Large are here at the front, and for you lucky people who have come along today, They are free. So please come along and take your copy. Are there